Do you ever use AI for schoolwork?
I probably shouldn't be admitting this, but
Today my worst fear finally came true.
I've been falsely accused by my university of using AI to write a paper.
Universities are fighting their AI problem with more AI.
It's just like AI.
Well, what does that look like exactly? And does it really work? That's what I'm gonna find out. So here's the plan. First, I'm gonna speak with current students about how they use AI.
I'm boycotting.
Then I'll explore the brave new world of AI detectors. And finally, I'll speak with a professor who's gotten rid of papers altogether in favor of an AI platform. Another person with a microphone. Do you ever use AI for schoolwork?
yes.
I do use AI, especially before tests. Like, it gives me like a little review guide.
Maybe researching topics or like rephrasing sentences.
Having someone, 24/7 that's available that you can throw ideas at.
When I'm writing an essay and, I don't think it sounds too good, I sometimes paste it in chat and say, hey, make this sound better.
What do you use it for math?
To explain the math homework that I fell asleep during class.
Do you guys use AI at all for your schoolwork?
No.
Not at all, no. No.
I hate AI.
I think generative AI is like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, I'm not a big proponent of it.
We're both theater majors.
I'm a screenwriting major. It's a pride thing for me more so than anything else.
I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of wanting to use AI and have it write the essay for you.
Chat just makes it sound like it comes from, an editor from the New York Times sometimes.
Okay.
I think people use AI to replace their critical thinking, and that's very dangerous.
The students in our small survey were split right down the middle, with 50% saying they used AI in some capacity for schoolwork and 50% saying they didn't. These results actually mirror larger surveys that have been published already, so that's interesting. Since ChatGPT launched in 2022, it's been a bit of a wild west on university campuses. The tech is moving faster than administrations can implement clear policies, so it's often up to departments or even individual professors to create their own AI guidelines. And it can get messy. Some professors have made use of free online AI detectors, platforms that claim to sniff out AI writing. But they're not consistent, and it's created a lot of anxiety for students who didn't use AI, but are getting flagged for it anyways.
Another day, another false AI accusation.
Do you know why he thought I used AI? Because there were dashes in the paper.
So how does an AI detector work? There's usually no hidden robot watermark in a piece of text, so a detector has to look for statistical patterns and pretty much makes a guess. Think of writing like playing darts. Every time you type a new word, you're making another throw. The closer a word is to the bullseye, the more predictable it is. The further away it is, the more surprising it becomes. So in a sentence that starts with, the cat sat on the word mat might be close to the bullseye. Chair is okay, a little implausible, but could make sense. But a word like detergent may not even be on the board. Generally speaking, AI language models are built to predict what word, or technically what token, is most likely to come next. They don't always pick the bullseye, but over hundreds of words, their darts can usually form a pattern that is smooth and predictable. One way detectors measure that predictability is through something called perplexity. Lower perplexity means the writing was easier for a language model to predict. Human writing is often more irregular. We repeat ourselves, we change rhythm. We use phrases that have voice or personality.
That's super fine.
We write long, winding, completely gratuitous sentences that keep going long after they probably should have ended, and tiny ones. Our darts aren't necessarily random, but the patterns are harder to detect. So traditional AI detectors study the whole dartboard and ask, is this predictable? Is this statistically safe? But there's a major catch. The detector doesn't actually know who threw the darts. Humans often write predictably. An AI can be instructed to write more randomly, and editing just a few sentences can scatter the whole pattern. That's what makes AI detectors flawed. They're not really detecting authorship. They're comparing patterns and making statistical guesses. And sometimes they get it wrong.
They might run it through an AI checker and say that, oh, this is AI because you use the semicolon here. And I'm like, but this is what I've been taught.
I'll reread a paragraph and I'll be like, I sound like chat right now. Like, I low-key do sound like chat right now.
I guess the way I write, I use M dashes and stuff.
Am I using too many M dashes?
I love M dashes.
Because I with an M dash.
They tell you don't use M dashes, don't use semicolons.
I think I've stopped using M dashes as much.
Bro, they took the hyphen away from me and it's up. Now I use ellipses because I'm like, oh, but now I feel like a weirdo using ellipses. It's so much worse.
Seeing how unreliable these were, I got in touch with Max Sparrow, the CEO and co-founder of Pangram. a fast-growing AI detector platform that's been praised by elite institutions, including University of Chicago's Booth School of Business.
The problem is they don't often have a consistent way to enforce it. They either just like look at something, they're like, I think this looks like AI. They're like copy pasting it into ChatGPT and saying, did you write this? You've got like this whole like spectrum, or they're going to like Googling AI detector, going to the first result, which is 0 GPT. It's kind of a problem. So the main thing about Pangram is it's the most accurate AI detection tech by a couple orders of magnitude at least. Pangram's false positive rate, the error rate on human written text, is 1 in 10,000, while most other AI detectors are between 1 in 100 and 1 in 20.
And you said 1 in 10,000?
1 in 10,000.
So you're exponentially better than the next one. Pangram doesn't use perplexity, which gets harder to build on as AI models improve. Instead, Pangram started from scratch using a classifier model. Pangram sources massive data sets of publicly available texts written by humans. For example, a college application essay written by a guy in a blue shirt. Pangram will then ask an AI chatbot to write that essay, including those details in the prompt. Pangram will do this over and over to uncover those deeper patterns that allow them to better identify the more discrete, telltale AI hallmarks. But as clever as the system is, it also has a weak point. Now in the internet, how do you know what's written by humans and what's written by AI?
So early on, we did have some data contamination where we assumed something was human, and then we later figured out that it was actually AI. But what we actually ended up doing was we just set a date cutoff of when ChatGPT was released. So November 2022. Anything after that could be contaminated.
Ah, that's so crazy, man. Even with a constantly improving model, there's even more tech being developed to skirt around it. The subreddit Bypass AI Detect gives users tips on how to avoid AI detection. Some of the posts come from fearful students trying to limit their exposure, while others suggest more blatant cheating strategies. One common method is to use an AI humanizer, a piece of tech that makes text appear less statistically predictable through paraphrasing, adding errors, or even embedding invisible text, like a zero-width space, to throw off the AI scent. And now, the written word has become a technical arms race to one-up the previous model. These LLMs can keep getting better, you can keep humanizing, and you guys will have to keep building.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cat and mouse, and that's what we're building for in the long term. They're going to come out with ways to be undetectable, and we're going to have to come up with ways to still catch it.
It's a good business model for you. You're going to be employed for a while.
Yeah.
I have some friends who really use it for everything, and I'm like, what are you even paying for at this point, I think, in your education?
One of my roommates actually loves it and he uses it on everything. And then to me, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's taking away from my work.
I don't want like AI like change the way that people like speak.
Why should I think about changing my writing style because of something that I didn't even use for that?
I wanted to see if there were professors who were embracing AI, but moving away from this contentious writing issue. And that's how I came across Dr. Dan Wang. Instead of papers, he assigned students to read business case studies and then debate with an AI chatbot called CAiSEY.
Hey there, great to chat. CAiSEY is a voice-first AI discussion partner that is meant to help students practice critical thinking. It's rooted in Socratic dialogue.
Socratic dialogue is an old-school yet highly effective way to teach. Instead of explaining answers through a lecture, teachers challenge their students' assumptions by asking probing questions, which help them sharpen their critical reasoning skills.
So we're looking at a scenario where Apple's all in on privacy, and the big question is, should they stick to their strict data privacy policy no matter what?
I appreciate that Apple doesn't share my data with...
The whole point is for them to learn through productive frictions, for them to be challenged, for them to respond to questions on their feet. And that type of experience, doing that in real time, has this effect of being a lot more memorable, but also simultaneously makes you reflect on how you're learning something. I would love to go have coffee with each and every one of my students to see whether they're absorbing what I'm teaching them. But each year I have 250 students. I need my sleep. But what if we could actually create that same type of experience using AI? Now you're leaning towards the position that Apple should maintain its strict privacy policy unconditionally.
I will continue to be a returning customer to Apple because I value that they value my privacy.
I hear you. The way that educational systems have been around the principle of one type of optimization, and that's scale. How do you scale education? And the easiest technology to deploy to make that happen is writing. But there's so many ways that people learn.
If you buy an Apple Watch, that your health data is safe on that Apple Watch.
Your argument is highly relevant to Apple-specific consumers.
What CAiSEY does is that it primes those students who might feel more hesitant about speaking up in class. And so when you have this argument by voice, you're much kind of more prepared and also, importantly, motivated in class to do it. The benefits of using CAiSEY to motivating participation mostly accrue to those students who, at the very beginning of the class, say that they're uncomfortable with participating.
That's a thoughtful angle because it touches on the origin of the data itself.
This is not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? There's still like a place for papers, there's still a place for tests, but this is one solution.
This is a period that's not going to last forever, but because it's temporary, that's all the reason to experiment.
What is it like going to school in the age of AI? People always talk about like the Gen Z attention span and da-da-da-da. And like, you know, I'm sure we're no better.
How old are you?
I'm 23.
Unk over here, 23. Yeah, these young kids today.